In ancient Greek mythology lived the heroine Atalanta. Her name, meaning unswaying and enduring, echoes the very essence of who she was. Uninterested in the roles women were expected to play, Atalanta was unwavering in her identity and unafraid to be herself. She was abandoned at birth by her father, who longed for a son, and raised by bears in the wilderness, growing up to become one of the most skilled hunters and fastest runners in the land. She was independent and untamed, and was warned that marriage would be her downfall. Determined to preserve her freedom, she vowed only to marry a man who could beat her in a race, knowing full well that no one could. Suitors lined up for the challenge, but all were defeated, losing their lives in the process. It wasn't until Hipponomes, with the help of the goddess Aphrodite and a handful of golden apples, finally distracted and outran her, that she was reluctantly claimed as a wife. But what made Atalanta timeless isn't how her story ends, it's what she stood for. Her myth is less about love and loss and more about agency, strength, and the right to choose your own path. She was a heroine who embraced her non-traditional gifts and used them without apology. Her story lives on in every woman who dares to run her own race, a reminder that being true to yourself is the greatest victory of all. This is Watch Her Cook.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cassie.
And I'm Danielle.
Welcome back to Watch Her Cook, a podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible lives of women who have taken their power back throughout history.
What did you think of my little intro today?
It threw me back to high school. I haven't thought about Greek mythology that much, but it reminded me of my Greek mythology class in 9th grade.
Wow. The last time I talked about Greek mythology was I did a maid of honor speech for my best friend Natea last summer, and I talked about the myth of like people being split in half and searching for their soulmate and yada yada. So that was my last dance with Greek mythology, but I really loved this story, and it's one that I don't remember learning about in 9th grade mythology class. And I think the sentiment is something that so many people can relate to, and just her standing up for what she wants. And I'm not a runner, but I can relate to her story because I feel like marriage will be my downfall. Just saying.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're married to the right person, it's not a downfall. It's just making sure that you don't lose yourself in your marriage.
But that's my fear. So
right. It's a valid fear.
Yeah.
I think it happens for sure. But I am also not a runner, but we are talking about a runner today. And we're actually going to our own neck of the woods today, which is exciting.
It is. Yeah. Finally.
God, we haven't talked about New England yet. And Boston is our place. So let's talk about probably the biggest marathon in the world is the Boston Marathon, or at least in the United States.
I would say the most well-known.
Yeah. And of course, we're talking about some women today, so let's get into it. Kathrine Switzer, a 20-year-old college student with a passion for running, never set out to make history. But in 1967, when she stood at the starting line of the Boston Marathon, her decision to run would challenge a deeply held belief in sports, that women had no place in long-distance events like the marathon. What unfolded that day would provoke headlines, spark conversation, and forever change the course of women's athletics.
Kathrine was born on January 5th, 1947 in Amberg, Germany, where her father was stationed as a U.S. Army major. In 1949, her family returned to the U.S., where she grew up in Fairfax County, Virginia. She discovered sports as a teenager, playing field hockey and basketball along with running a mile every day. After high school, Kathrine attended Lynchburg College before transferring to Syracuse University in 1966, where she studied journalism and English literature, with aspirations of becoming a sports writer.
Once she arrived, she was disappointed to discover that Syracuse didn't offer intercollegiate sports programs for women. This was not unusual for the time. Before we continue Kathrine's story, let's discuss the broader history of women in modern sports for a moment. We want to paint a picture of some of the challenges women faced, though the full history of the inequality women have faced in sports is complex.
For most of modern history, women were actively excluded from sports, not just socially, but medically and politically. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly in the US, prevailing ideas about femininity and the female body painted sports as dangerous for women. One of the most persistent myths was that vigorous physical activity could damage a woman's reproductive organs, particularly the uterus. Some even believed that too much exertion could cause infertility or even for the uterus to fall out, making women unfit for childbirth. These beliefs were used to justify bans or limitations on women's participation in everything from running to cycling.
That is just the most wild concept to me. Imagine if running made your uterus fall out.
It's like, sirs, because I know they're sirs thinking this. How do you think we got to this point in evolutionary history? If running caused the uterus to fall out or to become damaged or to harm any form of childbirth or whatever in the future, it's like we wouldn't have gotten to this point because
we would have been knocked out of
existence,
survival of the fittest. If we wouldn't have survived, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, no, it's like, okay.
It's just wild that was even common thought.
Widely accepted thought. Yeah.
Yeah. It always kind of brings me back to that astronaut who was a woman who went up to space and she had her period. So they sent 1,000 tampons or something.
Yeah. They're like, we don't know what's going on with you under your skirt, but you can have 1,000 tampons.
And then asked if it was enough.
Yeah. For what, a week or something that it was?
Yeah,
I don't know. We should look into that more because we should talk about it a lot.
Well, not everyone agreed with this whole concept of women can't do any form of exercise. Some educators and physicians argued that exercise could be healthy and beneficial for women, as long as it remained within, quote, the appropriate bounds, meaning light, non-competitive, and feminine. Beyond health concerns, sport was also seen as a domain to shape masculinity. Allowing women into this space was viewed as threatening to both the sport and the status quo. Female athletes who did break through were often accused of being too masculine, while at the same time, held to beauty standards male athletes never faced. While some women found ways to participate, often in middle or upper class settings like tennis or golf, access was extremely limited. White women began slowly gaining entry to certain sports institutions in the early 20th century, but for Black, Indigenous, and other women of color, opportunities were even scarcer. They were often barred entirely from mainstream athletic clubs, leagues, and college teams due to segregation, racism, and underfunding. Instead, they created their own spaces, thriving in community-run leagues, historically Black colleges, tribal schools, and local clubs.
A significant shift took place with the passage of Title IX in 1972, a U.S. legislation that prohibited sex-based discrimination in educational programs or activities that received federal funding. Prior to Title IX, fewer than 32,000 women participated in college sports, making up less than 16% of all college athletes. By 2020, that number was 7 times larger, with women now representing 44% of all NCAA athletes, which stands for the National Collegiate Athletic Association. Similarly, in 1972, only 7% of girls were involved in high school sports. By 2019, girls accounted for 43% of all high school athletes. But the fight is far from over. Today, female athletes, especially women of color, still face inequities in access, funding, media representation, and safety. The progress is undeniable, but so too is the work still ahead.
I think that those numbers are really exciting because when you go from 7% to 43%, that is a huge jump. Mm-hmm. But going back to something that I said a minute ago, talking about how women who are in sports are too masculine, but also they're expected to look a certain way and are judged on if they are pretty enough or if they're feminine enough. That is something that very much is in sports today, and we see it with professional athletes all the time.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's kind of this divide, even people who rebuked that idea that physical activity could be harmful for women and were kind of on the fence, the side of the argument or the fence of, no, there are benefits, but then there's still a stipulation of they have to be feminine activities, and it's like, who
Right.
came up with that? And what does that
You can do
look
this,
like?
but
There was
Yeah.
always a but. And to see once that but was removed through Title IX, just that jump in statistics clearly shows the interest and willingness and eagerness of women to participate in sports. And it's like that barrier was just, once it was taken down, at least partially, the influx of women who are just like totally stoked to be involved.
Yeah, you just know that once that barrier was shot down, there were so many women that were like, finally, this is my time to do this. I've wanted to do this. And I think that it's also important to recognize that sports aren't just about being athletic or participating in a game. Sports are such a big part of community.
Mhm.
I remember in high school when I played sports, I did volleyball and tennis, and then I also did the dance team. There was so much, yeah, of course you love what you're doing, but there's so much friendship that's built there. You learn so much about working with other people. There's so much community. It gives you this really exciting activity to do. Sports are so fulfilling. And to take that and say that women should not be allowed in that space is really upsetting.
I had no idea you did dance team. I
Yeah.
agree with everything you just said, but I'm kind of hung up for a
Surprise.
second. 4 years in or
Surprise.
more, still learning more about you.
Yeah, I'm full of secrets and surprises.
How long did that last?
I was on dance team for 4 years, and then I took dance
4
lessons
years?
outside of that. Yeah.
I've never seen you
Surprise.
dance other than like at a live music show at a bar or something.
I mean, this is my high school career, so it's been a long time, but I'm also love swing dancing. I'm actually pretty good at swing dancing.
Okay. That is
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know, it's just like the formality of a dance team. I did not know you were on.
Yeah.
And we just talked
Surprise.
about, I think it was last week on National Park After Dark, we talked about a little bit of my sport or my sports career, my soccer years.
Yeah. Yeah, you
yeah.
were a sports girl for a while too.
Yay, sports. I love
Yeah.
them. Okay, let's get back to Kathrine though, because this story is like gives me a lot of love for women in sports, even though I'm not somebody who turns on the TV and is watching any sort of sports on my own free time. It's like, let's just hone in on why this story in particular is so important. Kathrine wasn't officially allowed to join the men's cross-country team, but she was granted permission to train alongside them. That's where she met Arnie Briggs, the 50-year-old university mailman and volunteer team manager. Arnie had run for the men's team for 25 years, and at the time they met, had competed in 15 Boston marathons.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
On average, you'll have to wait 31 days to see an OBGYN. And if you're dealing with an infection or outbreak, you know you need care fast. That's where WISP comes in. Connect with a U.S. licensed provider online and pick up safe, effective treatment at your local pharmacy that same day. Plus, get birth control and more delivered in all 50 states. Take control with comprehensive sexual and reproductive care, all from your phone. WISP. That's hellowisp.com. The waiting room can wait.
In a recent article, an ex-Syracuse athlete said Arnie, quote, was the running community, known as a beloved role model and coach to many students.
One evening, Kathrine and Arnie set out on a 6-mile run, something they did frequently. During these runs, Arnie would share stories of the Boston Marathon. But on this particular night, Kathrine interrupted and said, quote, "Oh, hey, let's quit talking about the Boston Marathon and run the damn thing." Arnie insisted that it wasn't possible. The distance was simply too long for, quote, fragile women to run. The two bickered back and forth before Arnie relented, saying, "If any woman could do it, you could, but you would have to prove it to me. If you ran the distance in practice, I'd be the first to take you to Boston." Kathrine was elated. She knew that she was capable.
2 weeks before the marathon, the two set out to run the full 26-mile distance. By the final stretch, Kathrine still had energy and suggested adding on another 5 miles for good measure. Arnie couldn't keep up, and by the end, he passed out cold. The next morning, he knocked on Kathrine's door and told her it was time. But in order for her to run, she needed to officially register. Together, they read through the rulebook and entry form. There was no mention at all of gender, so Kathrine wrote down her AAU number, paid the $3 entry fee, and signed the form the same way she always had, KV Switzer.
I've never asked someone to add 5 miles onto a run.
Yeah, it's like, we're already at it.
Yeah.
Might as well.
But you know that was the point of, add 5 more miles. I've got this. This is fine.
Yeah, it was definitely a
little jab.
It was a
of
jab.
Like, look what I can do.
Yep.
And I think it's important to note the KV Switzer. It doesn't reveal her gender. Because being an official participant is an important detail to note. This is because there is another key figure in history of the Boston Marathon that we do need to highlight. Roberta Bobby Gibb, who was the first woman to ever unofficially run the Boston Marathon. Bobby Gibb was born in 1942 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She grew up running and had a deep love for the outdoors. Her mother used to say that she was never going to find a husband while running in the woods with the neighborhood dogs. But running brought her a sense of peace.
In 1964, her father took her to her first marathon and she fell in love with it. The following year, Bobby wrote to the Boston Athletic Association requesting an official entry for the 1966 race. But instead of receiving her race number in the mail, she opened up a rejection letter from the race director, Will Cloney. The letter read, quote, "We have received your request for an application for the Boston Marathon and regret that we will not be able to send you an application. Women are not physiologically capable of running a marathon, and we would not want to take on the medical liability. Furthermore, the Boston Marathon is a men's division event. The rules of international sports and the Amateur Athletic Union do not allow women to run races more than the sanctioned 1.5 miles. Sorry, we could not be more of help. Sincerely, Will Cloney." Let's just
Tell
take
a woman she can't.
Let's just
Tell
take
a woman
a
she can't.
moment.
She will.
Hold on a minute. Okay. I have so much to say about this.
Right.
Okay. First of all, the audacity.
First things first.
Secondly, women are not physiologically capable of running a marathon. By whose standards?
Who invented that? This is still, they still think that their uteruses are going to fall out if they run for more than 1.5 miles.
At 1.75, uteruses are falling.
Gone.
They're out of you.
On the ground. Everywhere. It would be a disaster.
It'd be a bloodbath.
Yeah. Imagine.
I mean, I can't even imagine the rage that Bobby felt, because I feel it, and it's not even my thing. Like, it's not even my sport. This isn't something that I'm passionate about, let alone it just kind of triggers the don't tell me what to do type of thing.
Yeah, don't tell me what to do, especially when she specifically reached out to them because she knows that she's capable, right? And to receive a letter from someone who has never met you before, has never seen you, does not know what you're capable of, to blatantly state women are not capable.
Yeah. Blanket
no,
statement.
You cannot enter. Yeah, with not knowing her at all. And I also think that it's important to mention the year 1966 or 1966. She entered the race. That's our parents were teenagers and young kids at that point, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that long ago. Well, anyway, this letter fueled Bobby's competitive fire and her rage turned into determination. She trained alone in nurse's shoes, which were the only comfortable footwear available to women at the time, and she had no running clothes. But she was running recreationally for up to 40 miles at a time.
Recreationally.
Just for a light jog, she went 40 miles. As the race was approaching, she began the 3,000-plus mile journey from San Diego to Boston, despite her husband's disapproval. She spent 4 days cooped up on a Greyhound bus, stopping for a pair of men's running shoes along the way, and could barely walk by the time she got out.
On the day of the marathon, with no bib number to show and dressed in a pair of Bermuda shorts and an oversized hoodie to disguise herself, Bobby hid by the bushes waiting for the race to begin. Once it did, she slipped discreetly into the crowd. Instead of being met with ridicule, men and women on the sidelines cheered her on. She completed the course in 3 hours and 21 minutes, faster than 2/3 of the other runners, paving the way for greater inclusion of women in long-distance running.
I love the support that she got when she finally got there. You know, she has this official letter that says you're not capable, but then other people in the community see her and rally around her and support her in those moments, which I think is really exciting. And she's told she couldn't, and she does it better than almost 2/3. She does better than 2/3 of everyone who ran the marathon.
Yeah, watch Bobby cook. But I think the other thing that you just touched on is so important, that even though official regulations or rules or standards are telling of one opinion, it doesn't mean that everyone feels that way. And largely, most people probably disagree with that. And that is really shown in this particular scenario because, yeah, on paper, Will Cloney is saying no because this is the regulation. But in practice, when she's there and surrounded by real life people, overwhelmingly she's supported. It like that shows such a disparity and disconnect between things that can be applied in a lot of different areas that I think is really important to keep in mind just in life in general, that, you know, real people and real life circumstances like are often very different than certain policies in place.
Right. A very good point. So pivoting back to Kathrine's story, we've talked about Bobby. She was the first person to unofficially run the Boston Marathon, but Kathrine is preparing to do that officially. And the days leading up to the race, shortly after signing up, Kathrine's boyfriend, an ex-American football player and nationally ranked hammer thrower, who they called Big Tom Miller, announced that he was also going to run, but didn't need to train because, quote, if a girl can run a marathon, I can run a marathon. John Leonard, a friend from the cross-country team, also signed up and completed their team of 4.
How does one get into competitive hammer throwing? Just a side question. I've never heard of that before.
Does anyone know? How do we sign up? But also imagine the person that you have a relationship with seeing all the work that you're doing and knows your aspirations to run this and knows the training that you're doing and how hard to come out publicly and say, if a girl can do it, I can do it. It's like, it's not if a girl can do it. You're saying if my partner, the person I am supposed to love and care about the most can do it, then it's easy.
Yeah,
it's just such a dig.
It is a dig. And it's very patronizing. And also, yeah, your partner is supposed to be your number one supporter. Like they are supposed to be the loudest voice in the room in support of you, not as someone who's digging at you and being like, yeah, well, I can do it. And, you know, like it's just not a good look to have.
No, not a good look. Not a fan of Big Tom already. The day before the marathon, they all piled into Arnie's car bound for Boston. It was a 5-hour ride, but the excitement in the car made it feel even longer. After arriving, Arnie insisted on driving them along the marathon course, excited to point out all the sights that he admired. Kathrine was already anxious, thinking of all the things that could go wrong, and witnessing the sheer distance was nerve-wracking. But after a big meal and encouraging words from her parents who trusted she would not take on anything unprepared, she went to bed in preparation for the morning.
Race day arrived cold and wet, but the weather didn't bother Kathrine. She applied her makeup and put on a pair of gold earrings. When she arrived at Hopkinton High, which is the starting point, their registration was ready and Arnie collected Kathrine's number, along with the rest of the team. Kathrine's bib read K. Switzer next to the number 261. She pinned the numbers to her sweatshirt and approached the starting line. Other runners and bystanders gave Kathrine a double take. Kathrine smiled back, her look saying, "Yes, I'm a girl." And much like Bobby, the response was overwhelmingly positive.
As they moved towards the starting area, Tom asked Kathrine why she was wearing lipstick, saying, "Someone might figure out you're a girl and not let you run. Take it off." "I will not take off my lipstick," she said back. And they were off.
I love that this is tied to lipstick because lipstick has such a storied history about resistance, especially red lipstick in particular. I don't know what color this was, but it's just a symbol and it's awesome.
It's such a statement. And it's a clear indication where she says, yeah, I'm wearing lipstick because I want people to know that I'm a woman doing this race. And I also am very confident that I'm capable.
At mile 4, they were followed by a press truck who were excited to see that a woman was running, slowing down to document the moment. However, not everyone shared this enthusiasm. After some shuffling and cursing, Kathrine felt a forceful yank on her shoulder, flinging her back as a man shouted, quote, "Get the hell out of my race and give me back those numbers." The man was Jock Semple, the race manager, furious to see a woman running.
Afraid and panicked, Arnie leapt to her defense, blocking Kathrine and urging Jock to leave them alone. Next came the sound of a huge thud. Big Tom launched himself at Jock with a crossbody block, knocking him to the ground. Frozen in disbelief, Arnie told Kathrine to run like hell, and she did. With the press truck following close behind, the entire altercation was caught on camera. The iconic images would soon go down in history as testaments of resistance, courage, and the fight for women's right to run.
I know exactly this image.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it before I knew who her name was and the story behind it.
Yeah, the full story. It's such an iconic image that is tied so closely to the Boston Marathon, which maybe is why we've both seen it. I wonder if everyone around the US is like, yeah, I've seen it, or if specifically because we grew up in New England, we're like, yeah, we know that image.
I don't know. I think it's the former. I think everyone kind of knows because it wasn't in a Boston specific thing that I saw.
Right.
This, you know.
Can you imagine that scene though of being tackled by an ex-football player in the middle of a Boston street?
Just this skirmish going on all because of you. Simply wanting to run a race with hundreds of other people is really wild.
Like, what's happening? I'm just trying to run.
This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Feeling stressed? Take a moment for yourself with Heyday. Stroll through rows of golden wheat, tend to cute barnyard animals, and discover the joys of a digital farm retreat. You don't have to hop in a car or catch a plane. Escape to the farm at the tap of a finger. With Heyday, you're not just tending to a farm, you're tending to yourself. Heyday. Search Heyday, that's Hay space DAY, in your favorite app store. Heyday is a free-to-play mobile game and offers optional in-app purchases and random rewards.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
The remainder of the race was a roller coaster of emotions. The press followed Kathrine, asking her what she was trying to prove. Kathrine was filled with anxiety that Jock was seriously injured and that they could face legal consequences. The tension brewed, leading to an argument between Tom and Kathrine. Tom blamed Kathrine that he would now never qualify for the Olympic hammer throw team, breaking up with her mid-race, telling her she was, quote, too slow anyway.
Which is really funny because, spoiler alert, he finishes after her.
I just, the drama of that, you have to break up with her mid-race. Come on.
While she's trying to accomplish her dreams.
It's like
get out, get away.
Yeah, can we not make this about you and your hammer throwing career right now?
It's like, thanks for tackling that guy a few minutes ago, but you kind of ruined that moment when you came back and broke up with me and blamed me for it.
Yeah, you were up, now we're down. Now I'm just trying to complete this. Like, can we maybe pause and have this conversation after this 26 miles is done.
Right. It's like, don't distract me when I'm in my moment here and try and bring me down. But it doesn't work. Despite being cold, anxious, and processing all of the day's events, Kathrine knew that she had a mission. Dropping out would only support the existing belief that women were not capable of handling the physical or mental strain of a marathon. Completing the race was no longer just a personal goal. It was for all women who had been underestimated or excluded, and to prove that women were no longer going to stand for this discrimination.
4 hours and 20 minutes later, Kathrine crossed the finish line, greeted not just by cheering spectators, but by a team of journalists irritated that they had to wait in the cold for a girl. However, it wasn't until that evening that Kathrine realized the impact she had made when she saw photos from the assault plastered across newspapers. She was no longer just a woman who wanted to run. She was now a national figure.
Bobby broke the barrier, proving that women could run, and Kathrine's confrontation with Jock became the spark that ignited public conversation and eventually policy change. An image from the day was later recognized as Time Life's 100 Photos That Changed the World. And 5 years later, the Boston Marathon officially opened its doors to female applicants.
5 years is kind of a long time, but a win is a win.
That is a long time.
A win is a win.
A win is a win. But also, those journalists, to be annoyed at a girl finishing the race, that's a moment in history, and you're annoyed to be there. You should be honored to be there. You're witnessing history in real time.
Yeah, but it's inconvenient for them, so. Along with many personal marathon-related accomplishments, Kathrine used her voice to advocate for women. In 1977, she founded the Avon International Women's Running Circuit, a series of 400 women-only road races in 27 countries. More than 1 million women participated in these races globally, and its turnout was used to lobby the International Olympic Committee to include a women's marathon in the Olympic Games. Their work paid off in 1984 when the first women's Olympic marathon was held in Los Angeles, welcoming 49 women from 28 countries.
Kathrine was additionally named Female Runner of the Decade from 1967 to 1977 by Runner's World magazine and went on to be an Emmy Award-winning TV commentator for marathons. Over the course of her life, she has released 2 books, one being her memoir titled Marathon Woman, which is where much of today's story details and quotes were pulled from.
Finally, in 2015, Kathrine founded 261 Fearless, a global nonprofit that uses running as a tool to empower and unite women, named after her bib number, 261. Through education and community-based running clubs, the organization helps women gain confidence, overcome fear, and take control of their lives. Her name exists in the National Women's Hall of Fame, where she will always be remembered as a symbol for change, courage, and resilience in the world of women's sports. And I just want to make mention that we chose this story to cover today, particularly for a couple reasons. When this releases, it'll be just after the Boston Marathon is completed, but as we record, that's right around the corner. It's about a week to go now. And not only are we fans of these 2 women because of what they stood for and what they went through and the advocacy that they unintentionally at first started off doing, but later became such symbols. But because, and not because we're fans of Boston, but because I personally have a friend that is a runner, a marathon runner, and she got into the Boston Marathon this year. And
so exciting.
It's such a cool accomplishment, especially because this girl, okay, her name is Michelle. Hi, Michelle, if you're listening. She is not even 100 pounds. She's so tiny. She's so small, but she is so powerful. She ran the Leadville 100 last year. She does races. Like, the Boston Marathon is just the first of 5 or 6 huge races that she's doing this year. Like, she does 100 milers, she does 50, 60 Ks. Like, she is racking them up. And to see her make the Boston Marathon is so cool, but it's made so much better knowing the history of women in the sport of running and the marathon in particular. And it just makes it so much like more full circle watching her do that.
Right. Because of these women, your friend can be there.
Yep.
And that is something that when I watch the marathon this year and I see all of the women who are running, I am going to be thinking of this story. And I'm going to think of the women who really paved the way so all of these women could do it and be out there.
Yep. Are you going to sign up for a race this year?
It's funny that you asked that because I've been looking into just some small ones, some 5Ks, but then I've also wanted to do like a Tough Mudder or something with an obstacle course.
Yeah, that would be fun.
What about you?
No.
Okay.
I've done a couple 5Ks in the past, and they were all for like fundraisers for shelters or animal rescues or things like that, because I could bring my dogs at the same time.
Those are fun.
But they were never anything super competitive or whatever. But that's not the point. The point is like we have the opportunity and the option to sign up for races if we want to. And that's
and the fun thing about 5Ks is that a lot of them, and especially when you're looking at charities and things like that, they're 5Ks, but you don't have to run them. It's just being part of the community and getting out and exercising and breathing fresh air and doing it for a good cause. You know, you don't have to be a huge runner to participate in some of these activities. The Boston Marathon is a different story. You got to be very, very qualified and train very hard for. But there are other options for people like us who aren't big runners, but appreciate people who do run.
Yeah, everyone who is in that world, so much respect.
So much.
I mean, I'm just calling out Michi, but damn, I follow her on socials, and every morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, and she posts her like Strava things. She's like, another 15,
still in bed.
15 miles down, great way to start the morning. I'm like, okay, that's amazing. But anyway, cool. Well, I'm glad we covered their stories.
Me too. This was a fun episode. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Watch Her Cook.
If you want to learn more about Kathrine or Bobby's stories, we've included some sources for you in the description. Let us know what incredible women's stories you'd like to hear next.
And a big shout out to Sick Bird Productions, who produces our podcast and helps bring these stories to life. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Watch Her Cook Podcast, leave a review, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Just a reminder, empowered women empower the world. Now let's go cook. See you next Wednesday.
When your company earns unlimited 2% cash back on all purchases with Capital One, that's serious business. So Stephen at SandCloud got a serious business card, the Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One.
We used our 2% cash back to help build our retail presence.
Savvy, Stephen.
And we get big purchasing power, so our business can spend more and earn more.
The Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/SparkCashPlus.